Hi guys, how are you?
Hello.
Excellent. Thank you for having us.
It's a joy to have you. I really love this record. I listened to it last night. It's certainly an ambitious album. It's a rock opera that has a story from beginning to end. I definitely want to get to that story. I want to set the scene a little bit, though. There are people listening who know the story well, but there are people listening right now who probably don't have their finger on the pulse of hardcore or prog or whatever we're going to call this record, and might need to be caught up. So I want to play a little bit of older, effed up to show a bit of the journey. This is something from your last record from Glass Boys. So that's a little bit of the song, Led by Hand. That's, I would say, like more of a traditional, classic, effed up jam. Big layers of guitars. Damien wailing away there.
Yes.
Yeah, Damien going flat out. Let's hear something from the new record. This is the title track of Dose Your Dreams. So that's a little bit of Dose Your Dreams, the title track from Effed Up's new record. Mike, I want to talk a little bit about how we got to that song, because it does feel like a bit of a big jump. Now, I want to understand that I've also been in bands, and I have no intention of getting into any kind of internal politics within the band. So all I want to know is, where were you at the end of that first song? Where were you at the end of Glass Boys, the cycle, musically or otherwise?
I don't know. I think we were kind of in a weird spot, but we've always been in a weird spot. And I think... to me now, Glass Boy seems more of a challenge to us than this record was.
How do you mean?
Just because we sort of had to really work to make a normal feeling album, and I think like a record like Dose Your Dreams is what people expect from us, and I think Glass Boys was something people expected the least.
Yeah, I think as well. Dose Your Dreams is kind of what we expected of ourselves, even more than people would have expected from us. People expect us to sort of surprise them, which Glass Boys did as well. So that's an expectation met. For us, when we're given absolutely no limitations, Dose Your Dreams is what happens, and most of the effed up discography is what happens. So.
Oh, I have to say, it was a bit of a surprise to me. I wasn't expecting it to go that way. I wasn't expecting it to be so sort of genre agnostic as it ended up being.
Well, it's funny that you played the song you did off of Glass Boys and then playing the title track. Of course, you played the title track from the new record. It's a given. But there is a space in between those two things from Glass Boys to Dose Your Dreams as well, and on Dose Your Dreams, the album. So, and that represents maybe like the peak of pushing the boat out. But there is a gradation that you can find, I'm quite certain.
Somewhere between the two of them.
Somewhere between the two. On an island in the sea.
Damien, how about you? How were you feeling at the end of Glass Boys?
Oh, I was exhausted. Glass Boys was really kind of the end. I kind of felt like that was a good punctuation point.
The end of what?
Band. The end of the band.
Really?
I thought it was like, or certainly the end of my need to be creative in the band. Like, I think Glass Boys is ultimately a compromise. Mike came to me and he's like, I want to do this crazy, elaborate thing that, I don't know, was it Dose Your Dreams you were talking about doing that when we first talked about Glass Boys?
I don't remember. I don't think so.
You were like, I've got this plan. It's going to be this crazy big thing. And I'm like, I don't have any interest in doing that. I want to do a stripped down, straight up hardcore record. And with Effed Up in 2018, it's impossible to get a straightforward hardcore record, and we got Glass Boys, which I do like that record, and I do stand by that being like, if I never write another album worth of lyrics again in my life, I said everything I wanted to say on that record. I think between all our records, I think all the things that I felt, I haven't said this yet, I think I said them on Glass Boys.
So you had a period at the end of that sentence after Glass Boys.
I think so. Yeah, like it felt like the end of a chapter in a big way. And I think, it felt like the end of the book for me, but I definitely an end of a chapter.
Jonas, tell me about the first sort of impulses to go into the studio after Glass Boys. The first impulses to go into the studio to make Dose Your Dreams.
I would say that there was very little impulse to go into the studio, to echo some of the things that Damien's saying in a way. And to bring in what Mike was talking about, Glass Boys being a challenge, it was kind of exhausting to get that done and get that on paper. And the idea of having to go back into the studio and churn something out creatively, I feel that there was a big void for us. It was lucky that we always have these other projects that we can work on, the Zodiac series, where you can sort of get ideas out of the way, kind of as though you need to overcook a few things before you get the recipe right. And going back into Dose Your Dreams, as you may have read, we had absolutely nothing prepared and nothing planned. So the prospect of going into the studio was kind of the same as sitting at home.
Were you worried you wouldn't go into the studio at all? Like, I mean, just judging by what Damien just said.
I didn't have that worry. Not to try and take the rug out of what Damien's saying about his creativity and what he needed to say. I just always assume that there's going to be some project that F'd Up is going to endeavor to be a part of. So that the studio really became a tool for us, a real conduit for songwriting. It became an instrument almost, somewhere between Glass Boys and Dose Your Dreams. So I just assumed it would be there, to tell you the truth. I have no idea in what way, but it's inevitable.
I can't get over the range of genres on this record. I don't really even like to talk about genres that much, but I do hear like I think we heard a bit of like sort of disco on Dose Your Dreams. It's pop, it's hardcore. There's just like doo-wop tendencies on this. Mike, was the intention to try out a bunch of different genres, or was it just things were coming to you and you wanted to put them out in the way they were coming in your head?
Yeah, like we weren't really writing an album. We just had, it was sort of like we had studio time. We were just writing music. And it wasn't until like a year later that the songs we had started to coalesce into a fully realized thing. So I think me and Jonah just spent so much time together, and everyone in the band is into so many different kinds of music and sort of like scholars of music, that we just had a lot in there. We wanted to sort of flex and just see what kind of stuff we could make. And it wasn't until a lot later that those songs started becoming F'd Up songs.
But what a rare privilege that must be, you know? Like for a lot of bands, they have to think about what their audience expects of them in a way that if we don't write this sort of punk song, if we don't write this sort of hip-hop album, then our fans won't love us anymore. But what's almost great about F'd Up fans is that they kind of want you to F with them a little bit, you know?
Yeah, and I think we got the stripped down record out of the way. And so I think, we were just sort of, we allowed ourselves to just do whatever we wanted to, and maybe more so than we usually do.
We're also on like the seventh incarnation of a F-head, as we used to call them, but like what the fans of the band, you know, like there were people that have, you know, been diehard fans and then sworn off us many times over. There's certainly people that have stayed with us the whole way through, but like, you know, the people that were with us during the 7-inch era didn't necessarily get on board with the J-Tree era. And then the people from the J-Tree era were like, I don't like the Matador records. And then, you know, it just feels like every couple years it's like, well, you know, we're not going to be able to retain everyone. And like, you can't, I think as a band, it's kind of unfair to expect people to stay with you the whole duration of your career, to expect everyone to stay with you the whole duration of your career, because people change, you know, tastes change. I don't like the same food I liked, you know, when I was a kid. And
You like the same bands though.
I definitely like the same bands I liked as a kid. My tastes don't change. I'm one of the rare people that my tastes do not change.
But when you're a band for so long, when you make a new record, it's almost like a non-event. People keep talking about the idea that this band is trying to change something all the time, or trying to turn expectations upside down. But after a while, a band that's been around for 17 years or however long it's been can't do that. The expectation is maybe that you'll just still exist. A new band that has never committed a song to a recording before, they expect and want to change something. They need to make their first statement that's going to completely put the brakes on everything that's come before it. Whereas we're part of this long continuum. We're kind of just like a forest or a mountain range or something at this point. Everybody just expects that we're still there.
Yeah.
So fans do come and go, but even the ones that have gone probably still see us looming in the distance, knowing that they'll have to interact with us again at some point.
Damien, as we kind of pointed out from talking to Mike and Jonah so far, you weren't there for all of this. So what was your reaction when the songs got brought to you?
Well, there were like kind of 3 stages. Jonah was there for the first stages. I got brought the songs.
We demoed a couple.
Yeah, there's definitely other versions of some of the songs.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where, you know, like I forget which one it was. Maybe it was. It was definitely one of the more industrially type songs.
House of Keys
was
the first one we demoed. Yeah.
And I remember being in there and being like, how can I write to this? I was also in the midst of kind of producing and hosting this wrestling TV show. So I was traveling like all the time, really focused on that. And it was just so different, and it was just so
Different how?
different sonically. I think it was different from what I wanted the band to be,
Right.
And I think with trying to write the way I write to those songs, I was having a lot of problems. Like, it was not a productive session. I think we got a B-side out of it, and that was about it for like the 4 or 5 days. And the lyrics I were writing were really lazy, and I was just like, what am I going to write about? I wasn't writing to something. This is before the concept was kind of introduced, and we were just kind of like writing and trying different things out. And I just couldn't really find it. And I remember going to Mike and being like, I don't know, like, this isn't really working. And then Mike came back and said, I wrote everything. Mm-hmm. And that at first was like, my natural reaction was like, well, I'm not going to sing everything you wrote. Like, I'll eventually write my own songs. And then, he just kind of had it all figured out. He had this whole kind of plan in place. And so for the first time, instead of being like, well, how do I fit into your plan? I was like, which is something that I think Jonah has done a long time in the band, been like, how do I aid this plan in it coming to fruition? And Jonah did that for me when I was writing songs with the band. It certainly does it for Mike. And so that's what I decided I was going to try and do this record, yes and.
Is that hard?
It's definitely hard. Like, I think it's hard to put your ego in check for anything, and especially in a band, especially being a lead singer in a band. I remember Gord told me one time, like
Gord Downey?
Gord Downey, sorry, that was like the worst name drop thing ever. But
Lightfoot.
Gord Downey told me one time that Gord Dufresne, actually head of Deranged Records, one time told me but Gord Downey said to me one time that like lead singers wear it differently. Like, as a lead singer, you have to take in all this energy, and that's positive and negative. And I think you do that night in and night out. You do that every time you write a record, and that's draining. And as a lead singer, you have to have this ego defense that's up in place. I have unending empathy for people in music that do silly things, not criminal, horrible things. I should specify, but like people that do and say dumb things. Yeah, because I think it's just like, it does pickle your mind eventually being in a band and being a lead singer of a band, because you just have to be in this constant ego void, and it's constantly up and down every day.
Do you feel like you're somewhere different with it now?
Oh, I think, yeah, like from the experience of being a singer, or just in my appreciation of what a singer is?
Just in terms of the ability to let go of control and that things are going to be okay.
Oh, definitely. I think in the band, I learned to let go. I think doing this wrestling show that I was doing and being like, wow, I'm living out this dream, and then kind of coming back and being like, well, Mike's got this whole record, and like, who am I to step in the way of that, and who am I to try and force myself in, especially if I'm not 100% into it? Like, if I'm doing that, it's only for ego. So yeah, like, I think there's a different appreciation. I think there's also a different appreciation for being in a band now that I'm coming back from Glass Boys. Like, this is a very, you brought up to Mike, we're very fortunate. We're in a band that we can kind of do what we want, and there are people willing to accept it and enjoy it and be along for the ride. And that is a huge privilege. And to be able to do this for a living is an unbelievable privilege. So I think, trying to appreciate that at every turn now.
I don't think there's a shortage of people who wouldn't be able to do that, who might storm out or might send off that angry email. But instead, you tweet out something very supportive, and you say, Mike and I grew up together. I really feel like this is the completion of his life's work to this point. I'm proud to be involved in this record in a way I've never been before. Mike, what's it like to hear that?
Oh, it was very nice. Yeah, felt good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We've known each other
Thanks, bud.
so long. Like, it's wild to like. I've watched few people grow up like I've watched my fellow members of this band and change and become different people. But Mike and I had a very, very intense friendship for about 7 years.
Is that so?
Made us, I think, almost like a weird, almost familial kind of relationship with one another, where I don't expect him to ever, give me a hug and say, thanks, Dame, but there will be sort of the sarcastic smirk given to me across the band that speaks the same sort of volumes.
But it must be, Mike, it must be nice to know that, there's people can support your vision, and people can come along with you on the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like now this is just my band. Like, we all have sort of the same roles as always, and it's all still 6 of us.
But so I'm wrong that this is maybe not. So this is not more of a pronounced role for you.
Well, I mean, I think there's just more focus on me this time.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, with this record, I just did what I always do. Like I like the craft, and I like writing, and I like being in the studio. And I think more was made of that this time, just because I ended up handling all the lyrics.
Right.
But there was years of work from everybody on this record.
Go ahead, please.
I think also Jonah being away. Jonah moved away, and that was like a
Where'd
big.
you go?
I moved to London, England with my wife.
How's that?
You can tell from his accent.
It's great. Yeah.
You do have like weird kind of voice intonations.
Even
now.
the way you said it's great. It was kind of it's
Yeah,
great.
it's great.
It's bloody great, mate.
Yeah.
I
said in it at the end of all your sentences for a while. There.
exactly. I'm also, you can't quite see it, but I'm like strutting around the studio, fanning my butt as I walk around.
Yeah, and he's holding onto a cup of tea with his pinky out.
Yeah,
as we
way
speak.
out. It's gone. It's not even in this room. Yeah, it's fine. I have resisted the temptation to hybridize my voice, but apparently I'm failing. The resistance is lost.
Sure, but that must change things as well.
What, occasionally engaging in a glottal stop, or
No, I believe living in a different continent than the rest of the
Well,
band.
absolutely. When I moved over there, I expected that my involvement in the band would kind of be the same, because the band has always been a little bit compartmentalized when it came to these work things. We were between records. We weren't particularly touring, and when we did tour, practice was at a minimum. It was something we could do front loading at the beginning and end of a tour. I was also studying over there. I was studying music, and I've got a master's degree in composition. To plug myself here on the air. Thank you very much.
La-dee-da.
Master Jonah.
I tell you, I am a master of composition, ladies and gentlemen of Canada. Nonetheless,
What did you focus on?
how much time we got left? No, I
Contemporary classical music?
yeah, contemporary classical music after 1950.
Did that make its way into this recording?
I would say that it did not, but I would say a lot of the things that I did learn there, it completely changed my relationship with how I make music and how I understand music. There are concepts that I was entertaining before within F'd Up, things that I came from my experience as a musician or my experience of having a musical background that I tried to help apply in the band and in the songwriting. And a lot of that stuff was, to be honest, was happening naturally in the band. Now, I see things in a different way. I feel on this record, my contribution, at some point, one just must decide to be useful. And so I'm not trying to flex that I've read a book that the rest of the band hasn't read, and I need to have it this way or that way. But anything that I learned, yeah, of course, I put it into the record, because every time you hear a new song, you put that into the next thing you make. It's new information. But being away, we did things remotely. I would come to town for a month. We might practice. We might play a show. We might speak to each other. We might not. And then off I went.
But I think all this goes to what Damien was saying earlier, is that there's like the methods of being in a band are changing, and what a band is and what we expect of a band is changing, and the idea of 4 mop tops on the cover of something, writing All My Lovin' Together is changing, and technology is changing that, relationships are changing that, and I understand what you're talking about for sure.
Well, I did a lot of recording remotely in the UK, sent it to Mike, he put it in plates in the studio, and then we'd sort of finish this product. And the whole record was made with 0 mop tops in the same room at any given time. It was all done sort of in small pieces, almost like a torrent or something, aggregating itself at the end of the road.
Well, I want to talk more a little bit about the record. If you're just tuning in, though, I'm speaking with F'd Up, Damien, Mike, and Jonah from F'd Up about Dose Your Dreams. Can you play a little bit from the record there?
He got a job right out of school. His place is small, but it has a pool. It's just a couple of stops away. He feels the sadness that he can't explain. Wish I for him to have fun.
Jonah, is that you?
No, that's an elusive Welsh singer called Nigel Bonks.
Oh, good. Good to know.
No, I cannot wait to see you do that live, my friend.
You gotta I tell you what, that's easy. That part's easy.
I want to take a page from the Sloan book at that point, and I want to do like a switcheroo on
Where
the
you play
instruments.
drums or something like that?
No, God, if I did that, there would be no. I only have one job in this band.
We have done that. We used to do that. We used to cover an old New York sort of art punk song, and Damien got on drums and I got on guitar. I would say huge success. Let's do it again.
I think the thing about drums is I have a really unique approach to it. Like most people think that it should be the rhythm of the band. I think it should be
be
more
the lead?
free form,
Yeah,
you know? Like,
yeah.
dude,
It's like the
out
Grateful
there.
Dead with 2 drummers, and you'll take the lead drums.
I just don't want to hit
and
the
then you'll
same drum
you'll
twice in a row.
Yeah, Mike. This is an album that has a narrative arc. I know this is a radio show, and we don't have all the time in the world. Can you succinctly summarize the narrative arc for me?
It's just about a guy who has problems in his life, and he finds the help of a homeless, shamanistic, elderly woman to help him. And then he finds release at the end of the record.
What do you find useful about telling the stories of a character as opposed to, say, a first-person narrative?
Well, I realized later that the record is about me and my journey of being in a band and
Really?
becoming okay with being a weird person in a weird band.
What do you mean?
Well, it's a weird life, and you're living in opposition to most of the people you see on the street every day. So I realized later on that this record was about me becoming okay with my own life,
So you are
using a character.
You are a troubled. You were this kind of guy trying to take stock of his life a little bit.
Yeah, and using a character I realized later what I was even writing about. So I think using a character lets you think of sort of your own life in a more objective way and to write about it truthfully, maybe.
Yeah. Is there is it an allegory? Is there someone for the shamanistic character?
Like from my own life? Mm-hmm. No, not really.
Drugs!
Well, not. I mean, kind of.
Sorry, someone's just coughing in the studio over there. I apologize for
Well,
that.
I feel like on the record, drugs.
dear.
Drugs are used allegorically for other things, but the shamanistic character is sort of an amalgam of one of the ghosts in A Christmas Carol and a character from this comic book, The Invisibles, named Tom O'Bedlam, who was a character sort of we meet him at the end of his arc, and he passes on his knowledge to the next character. So it's kind of that from that.
Damon, does that change when you hear from Mike that this is based around a first-person narrative from him, told through a third-person narrative, and then you actually have to sing a lot of these words? Does that change anything for you?
No, because as Mike was saying, I remember even telling you this in the studio. I'm like, you're writing about me. Like
Really?
You're writing this song trying to get me to say the things you think I think in my head.
What do you mean?
Well,
Can you give me an example?
I'm trying to think of an actual specific example.
remember you saying that.
But there was like one day where I'm like singing the song. It might have been Normal People. No, I don't think it was. I think it was like something else where I'm just like, and I honestly thought Mike was going to write this whole record about me. I didn't really know, and I think willfully so. I kind of try to keep as in the dark about what this thing was about as possible. Even now, like there's records that come out, like that Jade Hairpins record that came out last week.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's like, hey, is this you guys? I clicked on it, and I'm like, kind of sounds like that could be Jonas singing, but I don't know. Like, I really don't have any
Damon,
confirmation.
that's a funny thing though. Like
Yeah.
that's an unusual thing you just told me. I think that's fair to say, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's like, it's part of like the new appreciation for being in this band. Like, I think, it's fun to watch.
You're still in the band though, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm still in the band. I think the role, like Mike said, the roles haven't changed that much. I think though, what hopefully this does is open the door to whatever happens,
So do you still feel like you're singing about yourself when you sing these lyrics?
I think there's certain parts of those songs that I can relate to. I think Normal People, like the idea of like Mike talking right now, like I'm a parent now. You know, I've got 3 kids. I want to be a normal person. I want to be like for them. I don't want to be weird anymore. I want to be normal, not because I want to fit into society, because I think society is so awesome now. I just want to make their lives as peaceful and just as nice as possible. So I want to be a normal person. Like I'm looking around my house being like, I got a blood-covered barbed wire baseball bat hanging over my computer. I got books that are unbelievably crazy. I've got like all this stuff in my house and I remember growing up and my dad, I love him to death, and this is why I'm who I am. But like, I remember kids coming to our house, and our house was painted all black, and he had these 2 stuffed cobras, and he used to collect antique devils, and kids would just be like, "This is scary."
Is your dad Guillermo del Toro? Like, is he?
No, but when I went through that exhibit, I was like,
This is the Monsters
this
exhibit
could
at
be
the
my
AGO,
dad.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what was it called again?
Monsters, I think.
It was such an amazing exhibit.
Yeah.
He had, when I saw that he had the Phantom of the Paradise helmet, I flipped. But I was looking around there being like, my gosh, if my dad had made movies, this would be his house.
So you feel the impulse now to be a little bit normal. I understand.
I want to be normal for them. You know, I can't be normal though. Like Mike said, like this isn't a choice. You know, that's the thing is like I'm realizing now, punk doesn't make people into punks.
Into outsiders.
Yeah, they're outsiders looking for something,
Right.
and this is the something that finally speaks to them. I've just met so many people now doing this podcast about punk that I do that just have these journeys where I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's you were just a weirdo, like I was a weirdo,
Yeah.
and it was Dungeons and Dragons for you, and it was Dungeons and Dragons for me.
It was like weird country music for
Yeah.
me, like bluegrass music for
Yeah.
me, and then I was like, oh my god, this person likes that too. I thought I was the only one.
Exactly.
And then you meet your people, I
your
understand
community.
that.
You
Yeah.
build your community that way, and it's just like so. I definitely don't want to be normal for any other reason than I want it to be normal for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about trying to go to Disney World. Like that's really weird for me.
I'd like to see you at Disney World. That'd be all right.
I could eat some food there, I bet.
One of the things I thought about when I was listening to this record, Mike, and I'm usually loath to try and put any intention in anyone's record, but I saw and I read the PDF, like I got sent a PDF sort of about the record and what the story of the record was, and just a lot about the destructive power of capitalism, of greed, and one thing that came up twice was social media's effect on us. I saw it come up twice in the same description. The power I have, I think, over an oil conglomeration is like a super real thing, but it's sort of abstract to me. But I interact with my phone 24 hours, like a week. I've been tracking it, and I find that really disquieting. So I'm wondering, in the process of thinking about all these things, going through your journey, now that we understand that it's a first-person narrative, how are you with social media these days? Have you chucked the phone out? Where are you with it?
No, because I have to do the stuff for the band.
That's the
But
reason.
no, I mean, yeah, it's insidious in my life as it is in anybody else's, and that's one of the threads of the record is just about like choice and destiny and people's dreams and what people want life to look like, and the social media thing is just like it's such a huge part of everybody's life, and it feels like you have a choice, but it doesn't really seem like you do, and this kind of stuff is in people's lives because somebody else made the decision to make it that way. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, it's frustrating to live in a world where you seem like you have choices, but it doesn't really feel like you do.
Do you feel like you gained any new perspective through putting this record together on that?
No.
Well, now there's no alternative. Like when we started this band, there was still this alternative. There was still this sort of like Ian MacKaye like godhead that you could achieve. Like you could achieve complete independence.
I'm going to have community shows where I invite people in, and there's no conglomerate selling my tickets. Nope. I'm selling it through posters alone, people knowing, passing on the word about these things.
I'm going to have my records distributed by independent distributors to independent record stores. I'm going to shop at independent businesses. But now you cannot help but be corporately engaged at every step of the way. Well, like you pick up your phone, like I pay. I'm not going to say which company, but I pay one of the big Canadian telecommunication companies a little bit of money every time I want to check who liked my picture on Instagram.
Yeah.
And as a band, like I can't. There are bands who aren't, so I shouldn't say every single band.
But it's awful hard.
Yeah, like how many bands are on Spotify? That's traded on the stock market. Like that's we've done stuff to promote our record on Spotify. Mm-hmm. That would be abhorrent to a punk kid in the 90s or in the 80s.
So how are you doing with it? How are you doing with all that?
It's kind of the way it is.
Yeah.
And it's you can't put that genie back in the bottle. And I also benefit from it too. Like I'm on Spotify dipping in, dipping out of all these musical genres, all these musical worlds. I'm checking out records that I haven't listened to or thought about listening to in years. So I'm benefiting from it just like the rest of the people. And I'm just as lazy. I could be going out and still just buying. I still unfortunately do buy a lot of records, but I could be buying even more records and just doing it all analog. But I'm guilty as everyone else. Like Mike said, it's just as, with kids especially. Like when we were kids, all you had to do was resist the radio and the TV. Mm-hmm. Now there's algorithms to make sure that you're coming back as often as possible.
And they're presented to you as being resistant to the radio and TV.
And they're presented to you as being the alternative.
Yeah, they're like, hey, we're not the multimedia conglomerate. We're here public broadcasting. We're not the comedia conglomerates. We're the good guys. And then it's I know they're trying to kill you. But Jonah, do you feel like this is ultimately a hopeful record?
I do think it's a hopeful record. I think it's about learning to, yes, accept your place and accept that you're okay, but I really think it's about learning to relate to other people, and that being a more important and perhaps more pure idea of normalcy or success. And unfortunately, what we've just been talking about, social media and Spotify, I mean, I have fewer irons in the fire of the...
You're home listening to Rimsky-Korsakov, I know, and
Yeah.
Brandy, I understand.
He lives on a boat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For real.
really?
I live pretty off grid.
Oh, cool, right. Oh, then I didn't mean to be glib. Sorry.
No,
about that.
that's all right. I'm basically that.
Yeah.
Korsakov, please. That's entry level. But I think that what those things have done, which is negative, is they've co-opted the idea that you can relate to somebody through the things that you experience, art, culture, the world, looking at something. There's all of a sudden this really negative filter that's been put in front, and it's a corporate filter or it's like a mass media filter. This record is kind of about removing that filter and understanding that even when you take the glass away and the image is the same, there's so much there. And there's so much there without having to rely on looking through this cipher. The cipher is the fact that you exist and you can consume things at your pace, the way you like, and you can be yourself. I think it's an immensely uplifting record. And there are a few moments when I was listening back to these mixes. I think when I was singing those a cappella songs and I was listening back to just the first pass with no music underneath, I'd never really paid attention to the lyrics, even when I was singing them, until I heard them back. It's very moving. It's like a person that, I mean, with all due respect, the guy's right in the room, but it's a very vulnerable thing to do, to say like, I'm a bit lost. And to bring a listener along this journey of getting completely lost and just flat out saying, I don't know what I'm doing. And then at the end, having this realization that you can relinquish yourself to the world and the world will still catch you without grinding you to a pulp. That's optimism right there.
You're right. Mike, I don't mean to be cynical, but I asked this to Meg Remy from US Girls too, is that there are also going to be people who listen to this record and just like the way it sounds. Mm-hmm. Are you comfortable with that, with the idea that people may not understand the narrative?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm more of like a crafts person than a storyteller, and I think, our suit is still music, and I think our legacy will be the way we sound, and so I think that the record is big enough. I hope that it can be taken in many different ways, and maybe when the music runs out, the feeling is still there, or vice versa.
Or maybe you want to go back over it and see what you might have missed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But you anybody can take it the way they want.
Like I tell you, this really feels like a new, I don't know, is it maybe a new start for F'd Up or something like that?
Hopefully. Like I was hoping this would happen a couple years ago because I kind of think, we're a really weird band. Not a weird band, but like...
No, you're kind of a weird band.
Well, we're definitely a weird band. But I mean, we're not weird because of this reason, but we're just like, we have a lot of different songwriters that have a lot of strengths. And I think... allowing people to flex their muscles a little bit more in the band is something that hopefully this is the start of, Like I think we had the Davidstown compilation years ago, which I think is the most collaborative record we've ever done, where everyone in the band, pretty much except Josh, sang on it. But didn't you sing on one? You sang backups, I thought, on a song, no?
Maybe.
Okay, well, anyway, for the sake of the story, Mike, you did.
Almost everybody.
Almost everybody. Actually,
what they say in the radio is virtually everyone.
Virtually everyone in the band.
Yeah.
But we all wrote for it, and we all kind of like, even Josh did lyrics for that stuff, and I think that was that was really cool, and I think hopefully we have a way to kind of let this be a much more open band.
I really love the record, and
Thank you.
Thanks, I mean, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having us, Tom.
Thank you.